Hi, it's Saturday, September 27th, Friday the 26th in the Atlantic, and we've got our same three systems to discuss in the Atlantic today, and we're going to be going in the same order that we did yesterday, starting with Tropical Storm Bualoi in the South China Sea, then moving to the Atlantic with Humberto, then PTC 9 or future Imelda. So starting off in the Western Pacific with Bualoi, this is a closer infrared loop of the system. The system has now cleared the Central Philippines, so the impacts are now pretty much gone for the Central Philippines, and now we're waiting to see when the system fully recuperates itself over the South China Sea. There is still some apparent shear impacting the vortex. This is a wide imagery over the system, and if you look over this part of the world, just northeast of the Philippines, we've got a bunch of easterly flow easterly flow going towards the west into the South China Sea. And as it gets into the South China Sea, we've got an area of high pressure over South Central China and northern Vietnam. So this helps to bend the flow back towards the southwest, and this is imparting a northeasterly shear vector upon Bualoi right now. And you can sort of get the sense of this. Whereas if we look at this infrared imagery, a lot of this convection is struggling to wrap onto the northern side, which is a common side effect of northeasterly shear like we have today. Now, the shear is not forecast to be around for too much longer. You can see this is a model initialization for overnight, and you can see all that easterly flow turning to more northeasterly over the South China Sea. But this shear is relaxing, and you can see by this evening, a lot of that easterly shear has now decreased, and this is now a more favorable environment for Bualoi to intensify in, and models are in general agreement that we will see a re-intensification into a typhoon by this point. Now, one thing that we need to still watch for the shear, which may cap how strong the system could get, is you can see we have an area of high pressure. This is the one that's currently over South Central China, and we've got this upper low sitting over the south coast of China. And both of these features are progressing towards the west alongside Bualoi. But Bualoi seems to be moving a little bit faster than these two features are. So the system is always approaching this zone of northerly shear across the western South China Sea near the east coast of Vietnam. And so some models like the GFS here show the shear starting to impact the system towards landfall in central Vietnam. And you see the pressure number there after falling fairly quickly really levels off because of land interaction, but also that increasing shear by that point. And this is also helped by the system has trended a little bit faster over the past day than it was in prior runs. It's not by much, but it's ever so slightly faster, which means it's closer to this shear vector. So the system is likely going to be capped from, say, rapidly intensifying into a very strong typhoon, but there is still certainly a potential that the system becomes a strong typhoon before making landfall in Vietnam. And that is the current forecast from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. You can see coming up to a strong typhoon by landfall on the 28th, which is Sunday local time. And this would be, significant impact for central Vietnam. And by this point, the system would begin to level off because of that shear, but also land interaction. But we're likely not to see very appreciable weakening occur before landfall. So this could still be a very strong hit for central Vietnam. And there is still some wiggle room on this forecast. It's possible that it still comes further north, closer to Hainan, and that could increase the storm surge risk and wind risk for the region. One thing to note about this is the northern side will likely be a little bit fatter, as it tends to be with tropical cyclones in the northern hemisphere. You can see we have a very fat side of tropical storm force winds on the northeastern side, or on the northern side as a whole. And so even though the system is forecast to track south, we're likely still to get raked by tropical storm force winds, with potentially some gusts near typhoon force along the south coast of Hainan. Though the strongest winds based on this forecast staying south of the island is forecast to stay offshore. Now, hopefully what we can see is, you can see all the strongest winds are on the northern side, like I just mentioned. Hopefully what we could see is the northerly shear and land interaction disrupt this some, and we could see some weakening take place prior to landfall and keep those strongest winds offshore. But again, I don't think we're going to see much appreciable weakening, and you can see that in the HAFS model, we really don't see too much appreciable weakening take place prior to landfall, and this comes in as a strong typhoon by Sunday evening or early Monday local time. So preparation should be underway for the system in central Vietnam as it approaches alongside southern Hainan, as it's possible the system still gets rather close there. And I may have another video on this system before it makes landfall in central Vietnam, though the forecasting phase is coming to a close with the system as it nears landfall, so we probably won't have too much to discuss more with that system. Okay, we're now going to move to the Atlantic as we have two systems still to discuss here. We're going to go in the same order that we did yesterday, starting with Hurricane Humberto here in the central Atlantic. And this system has really been impressive today. We've seen a rapid pace of intensification, and this is now a major hurricane of Category 3 strength with maximum sustained winds as the latest advisory from the Hurricane Center of about 115 miles per hour, though it may certainly be stronger than that. And this is a little bit faster than models had anticipated. The westerly shear that was impacting the system yesterday seems to have backed off a little bit quicker than models expected, and hence the rapid intensification that we have seen. It's possible that we do still have some shear impacting the system from the west. You can see if you look at these milky white cirrus clouds, it may be hard to see, but there are some here on the western side. They are a little bit restricted with how far west they can get because of all this shear here that you can see on the western part of this map. And so it's possible that we still have some level of shear going underneath of the outflow in impacting the hurricane, though it does not seem like it's having a very significant impact clearly, as we are now seeing another attempt of the eye clear. And once the eye clears, the intensification or the intensity estimates that we have really jump up, as once you get the eye clearing like that, the storm tends to be of pretty strong strength, potentially of Category 4 by now. And going over the next few days, the system is forecast to be in a rather ideal environment to maintain a powerful intensity within the Western Atlantic. The remnant upper trough that was bringing westerly shear, this is continuing to weaken over the next few days. You can see by Sunday, the remnants of it are very weak and sitting up here by Bermuda. And behind, it has left a very favorable environment and low shear for Humberto by this point. And the models are in unanimous agreement that the system will remain a powerful hurricane throughout this entire time frame. Now, one caveat to that still is PTC 9 or future Imelda. If the system does intensify, say a little bit more than some models suggest, it's possible that we do have some shear being imparted by Imelda upon Humberto. But for now, models are not showing this all too much because we're not expecting a ton of intensification from Imelda, but we'll talk about that in a moment. Now, eventually the system will begin to weaken as it tracks further north as the waters begin to cool, but also as it approaches all the southwesterly flow with the subtropical jet in this part of the Atlantic. And this will be as the system is passing very close to Bermuda, and it's possible that we do see some impacts to Bermuda going forward into the early to middle part of next week. You can see in the Hurricane Center forecast, remaining a major hurricane through Tuesday of next week, and then as it recurves, it begins to weaken. But you can see Bermuda is now in the forecast cone of where the system could track. And even if the system does not make a direct landfall, we still have a pretty good shot of getting some impacts here because as the system is now getting sheared by this point by this southwesterly flow here, similar to Gabrielle when it was east of the island, the eastern side is probably going to be the heaviest weighted side. So it's going to be the ugly side, so to speak, of the hurricane. But unlike Gabrielle, Bermuda is unfortunately going to be on the eastern side of this. So we could see tropical storm force winds and potentially hurricane force if it does get close enough, though the exact details on where the system tracks are still a bit murky right now, and it partially does still depend on the interaction we see between Humberto and future Imelda in the southeastern Bahamas and Turks and Caicos, which we are about to start talking about now, as that was Hurricane Humberto's segment. And now for the rest of the video, we're going to focus on PTC 9 or future Imelda. And I'm going to call it Imelda just to avoid any confusion because there's a lot of designations that are changing right now, and the system will in all likelihood get the name Imelda. So the system has not really changed all too much over the past day. We have seen some decrease in the westerly shear, not fully, but it has decreased enough to where we're seeing better convective formation near the low level center, which is likely somewhere in here. You can kind of get the sense that there's a broad turning of counterclockwise flow near the northeastern coast of Cuba and over the Turks and Caicos. And this is likely where the low-level center is. Now, the mid-level center is still a little bit offset to the east, but as this shear continues to decrease from out of the west, this tilt should get better, and that will allow the system to form an area of low pressure at the surface and begin to form into a tropical cyclone. And that is the expectation going throughout this weekend. Now, track-wise, things are still very similar to yesterday. It's still a fairly uncertain forecast onto exactly, is the system going to make landfall or is it not going to make landfall? And this is a very subtle forecast that we need to really watch in real time, because as was the case yesterday, models are still kind of in this guessing game of where is the surface low going to consolidate? Is it going to consolidate here, here, maybe here, further down the line? And any of these points could be correct, and all of these different points have different futures for Imelda going forward. For example, we've seen some changes in the GFS since yesterday. The GFS has now shown a scenario where the system takes a little bit longer to form a more coherent low at the surface. It's taking a little bit longer. So because of that, the wave axis as a whole remains a little bit further towards the southwest than it was showing in runs even earlier today, but also earlier yesterday. And so for this reason, the system is ever so slightly slower because its position relative to the Bermuda High further north is further away. So the pull towards the northwest is a little bit less if it's further southwest compared to if it's further northeast. And so because of this on this GFS run, the ever so slight difference of it being a little bit slower is enough for Humberto to make enough progress and start interacting with Imelda by this point. And by this point, on the western end of Humberto, it's trying to push it away from the Carolina coast. So in this specific run, we see the system stall offshore. Now, this is much different to what we've seen over the past few days, even just the run earlier today, where you can see it develops scenario flow pressure further northeast and faster. And so the system as a whole is faster. So it gets inland before Humberto is able to have a say and stop it from moving inland. And so this is the primary uncertainty that we're still dealing with here. And, which one's going to be correct? Hard to say still, because like I said, the models are still playing a guessing game onto where exactly the surface low is going to form. We do have recon data or recon plane flying out today, and they're going to get recon data that will be put into the models tonight. And over the next day, we'll likely start to see consolidation of a low at the surface. And so, say by this time tomorrow night, we may have a much better idea of where the system is eventually going to track. And we'll know more so then if it's going to make landfall or not. Now, regardless of this, the system is still likely to get close enough to bring impacts to the southeastern United States. That seems very clear by the current model consensus. You can see that even though the GFS on this run does not make landfall in the Carolinas, this is very close. If we just take a measurement, this is less than 100 miles off the coast of South Carolina in this instance, and this is still going to bring impacts to the southeastern United States coast in the form of very heavy rainfall. But also, especially if it's close like this, we could get some storm surge along this coast, which could be prolonged. It does partially depend on how strong the system gets, but a prolonged onshore push like this could lead to some significant storm surge flooding along the South Carolina and North Carolina coast. Now, talking about the pattern for the rainfall aspect of this, if we look at the upper level flow around the southeastern United States, around Imelda by this weekend, or early next week rather, this is by Monday evening local time. Imelda by this point is here, just east of Georgia. It's now stalling off the Carolina coast by this time on the GFS model. Humberto is here, and we've got this negatively tilted upper trough sitting over the southeastern United States. And what I mean by that is it's oriented from northwest to southeast. Now, this could, for intensification purposes, allow the system a phase of intensification potentially towards a hurricane, because on the eastern side of this trough, the flow is more out of the southeast, and that's aligned with where the system is tracking. So that may mean a period of lighter shear, which may allow the system to intensify into a hurricane. That seems like a decent possibility, at least going off of hurricane models right now, and even global models as well. But once the system stalls, it will begin to get sheared, and the system will likely weaken by that point. But the problem is that this shear vector is out of the south by this point. So even though the system is stalling offshore, all of the moisture and heaviest weather is going to be pushed onto the northern side of the storm by this point. And you can see this illustrated very well if you look at the moisture plot from the GFS. You can see all the green here showing you deep tropical moisture that is being funneled right into the southeastern United States. And this is likely to lead to lots of heavy rainfall, because what this upper trough also does on this eastern side is we've got a lot of divergence in this part of the world. And what that means is air is spreading away at the top of the troposphere. And what that promotes at the surface on the southeastern flank of this trough is thunderstorm developments. And all those thunderstorms that form are going to get pushed as well into specifically the Carolinas, but also really along this entire section of the southeastern United States. And so this will likely lead to a lot of storms coming ashore, dumping rainfall over areas for a long time, for several days potentially. And this could lead to a lot of rainfall falling over a few day period and could lead to very significant flooding in this area. And this is a current forecast from the Weather Prediction Center. You can see rainfall totals are now coming up because we're now, even though we're not fully sure if it's making landfall or not, we're still getting confident on the system being close enough to bring significant impacts to the southeast. And anything in the red there is over 2.5 inches of rain. And we're even seeing some totals along the South Carolina and North Carolina coast approach 5 to 7 inches. And that could even raise higher over the next few days as we get more confidence in the forecast. So regardless of what the track is going to be, onshore or offshore, preparation should be underway regardless. And it's important that you stay tuned closely to your local weather office and the National Hurricane Center for the latest information on the system, as forecasts are going to continue to get updated over the next few days as this situation evolves. Now, for now, we have a PTC, which is a potential tropical cyclone, which means the system is not a tropical cyclone yet, but is expected to become one. And what this allows them to do, the Hurricane Center, is issue tropical storm watches and warnings if the system has not become a tropical cyclone yet, but is likely to bring tropical storm or hurricane impacts to areas in advance. So they've issued tropical storm warnings for the southeastern Bahamas, tropical storm watches for the northern Bahamas, and nothing yet for the southeastern United States, but that will likely change as we go in time as this gets closer. As a tropical storm watch means that you're looking for tropical storm conditions being possible in the next 36 to 48 hours. So by the latter half of this week and into early next week, we'll likely see those watches get extended up here into the southeastern United States. And talking about those tropical storm force winds, you can see the tropical storm force wind field probabilities. They are getting raised here now along the coast, as you would expect. As we go in time, this will likely raise further. And you can see the arrival time of when these winds could arrive at their earliest. So this gives you a sort of time frame from when you need to have your preparations done along the southeast. And you can see really from northern Florida into North Carolina, we're looking at Monday morning. So you've got all this weekend generally to prepare for the system ahead of time, alongside the flooding impacts that we'll also have with this system. And I'll have more videos on this throughout the weekend and into early next week as it progresses towards the northwest. But for now, that's all that I've got on all of these systems today. And I'll have more systems on not only Imelda, but Humberto and Bualoi in the Western Pacific over the next few days. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.